Okay, we are here for part two of my response to Terry, aka California Catholic. And when we just dropped off, we were looking at the concept of Mary's sinlessness being implicit in the Bible. And I'm going to just repeat the quote from the Catholic Answers website. Newer translations leave something out that the Greek conveys, something that the older translation conveys, which is this kind of grace. And the core of the word kecharitomene is charis, which is the Greek word to grace, is at once a permanent and of a singular kind. The Greek indicates a perfection of grace, a perfection that must be perfect not only intensively but extensively. The grace Mary enjoyed must not only have been as full or as strong as possible at any given time, but it must have extended over the course of her whole life from conception. So, there we have it. Carl Keating from Catholic Answers is arguing that based upon what is found in Luke 1:28, that we can safely assume that Mary was indeed sinless throughout her entire life. So, the verb in Luke 1:28 is charis. The form that it winds up becoming is kecharitomene. So let's see. Is the verb form indicative? The verb form is a perfect passive participle. Now, I'm not much of a Greek guy, but it basically there's a couple different meanings of when a verb is in the perfect passive participle form. So the question is, does the verb charis or charis which means to grace, indicate sinlessness? The answer is no. The exact same word is found in Ephesians 1:6, where it talks about how God has bestowed a great blessing upon believers from eternity past. He has graced them from eternity past. No one would argue that the Ephesian believers that Paul was writing to are somehow sinless based on this. The argument is not so much with the verb itself, but the verb form. So the question is, being that the verb is in the perfect passive participle, does this mean somehow that Mary has been graced her entire life all the way back to conception? Well, let's take a look at a couple other perfect passive participle forms. In Matthew 25:34, the verb blessed is in the perfect passive participle form, where Jesus said, "Then the king will say to those on his right, 'Come, you who are blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world.'" From the world. This is, a very similar verb to bless, and it's a pretty similar context of address. It wouldn't be real easy for Roman Catholic theologians and apologists to speak of a fullness of blessing, and talk about the meaning of the verb. I think it's euvilage, which means to bless, meaning that these people had a strong, complete, full, lifelong blessing, extending all the way back to their conception. There's a couple other examples of a perfect passive participle form of a verb in 1 Thessalonians 1:4, 2 Thessalonians 2:13, meaning beloved. So, just because a verb is in the perfect passive participle form does by no means, indicate that, somehow the people who, the verb applies to, have, this verb can be said of them for their entire life. Being that the form of grace or charis is kecharitomene in Luke 1:28 does hardly, but by no means necessarily indicates that she is, has had this fullness and long-lasting perfection of grace her entire life and was in fact conceived sinlessly and is now currently sinless. what do we do with the perfect passive participle form in Luke 1:28? Well, what do we do with it in those other verses? Well, the perfect passive participle form can indicate the certainty of which a verb applies to a person. Certainly, in Matthew 25:34, when Jesus is saying, come you who are blessed, come those of you who are surely, most certainly, most utterly blessed by my Father. Same thing with the verse in Thessalonians, beloved, you know that you are certainly, doubtlessly, no two ways about it, beloved. And by the same token, I think we can say that what the angel was saying was, hail to you who are certainly, doubtlessly graced by God in bearing his child, the Son of God, the Messiah. There's no need to, the only reason why you would take the meaning of a permanence of grace being instilled on Mary from birth onward is if you have, you have to pour the dogma into the verse and come to that conclusion later. So long story short, there's certainly no foundation in the early church fathers of believing from Ignatius onward or whatever that Mary possessed was sinless. Chrysostom and Tertullian both definitely excluded her. They kind of spoke poorly of her behavior in Matthew 12. Justin, said every single person, needed to be redeemed from Adam on. Did not mention Mary. And, it's not really implicitly biblical either. So what you have here is Roman Catholicism forcing a dogma on people. And for any people watching this who are Protestants or whatever, this is a dogma. If you do not believe Mary's sinlessness, you have departed from the faith. I mean, you're gone. This is the same as denying the Trinity or Christ's bodily resurrection. You have Roman Catholicism saying, that if you're denying this, if you're doubting this, you are a heretic and you're out of the faith. And and if you go to them saying, well, gee, it doesn't appear to have been handed down by the apostles based on the witness of the patristics, and gee, it doesn't really seem to be implicitly biblical. You know what they're going to say? Just trust us. We're the church. Well, sorry, they failed in this regard. The just trust us approach, it just doesn't fly. So that's my humble 2 cents worth as far as the sinlessness of Mary goes. And I want everyone watching this to understand, I greatly admire the Mother of Jesus. I look forward to thanking God. I thank God for her frequently, that she said yes when she could have said no, and I look forward to thanking her in heaven. She was a great lady. She was probably the greatest lady who ever lived. I have no beef with this magnificent woman whatsoever. I just have problems with Roman Catholicism making things dogma that you can't find in the early patristics, and in fact they deny it, and is not implicit in the Bible either. That's it for today. God bless.